Hello, in Module 10, you'll actually be spending a lot of time with your team or pair trying to get your collaborative lesson plan underway. You actually have 2 weeks to work on this, but if you don't get started this week, you will be putting your team at risk of not completing it. And so you definitely, if you haven't already made contact with your team, you will be doing that first thing this week and definitely be working towards that collaborative lesson plan throughout this week. In addition, you have a um, assignment that is the digital blog post number I, which is based on chapter 4 for this week. So let's go to the module and look at it together. This is the overview, looking at Module 10, Chapter 4. Your expectations is that you'll be able to describe the basic elements of lesson planning, as well as to include and identify different types of lesson plans. So you're going to be putting this into practice, and I've provided a number of different resources to help you with that. The first of which is a general overview about lesson planning. There's a presentation slide at this link here. There are very important pieces to a lesson plan, the first one being the curriculum. And the curriculum is based on standards. Standards, we all have to work around standards of some kind or another that some other entity has provided us. And the standards that we work with in the public Florida school system are what used to be referred to as Sunshine State Standards, and sometimes you'll see that pop up again, but it is through the CPALMS network. And so this link right here, Florida, if you click on here, you'll go to the cpalms.org site, and it will provide you with a way to search for standards based on grades and content area. And you should become fairly familiar with that site. It will also give you some sort of typical or exemplary lesson plans that you can work off of. You can start with them and then enhance them or develop them to work for yourselves. You've also probably heard of Common Core, which was kind of in existence for the last decade or so. And Common Core, even though Florida never adopted Common Core as the Common Core, I would guess that if you started to really analyze the Common Core standards with what we now have through CPALMS, you'll find significant similarities. So nationally, there is Common Core. And then the other thing that you'll want to do is to consider for your lesson plan, because we are a course on educational technology, the NETs for students. These standards are available at this link, but they're also on the inside cover of your textbook. And there is the expectation that you will include those in your lesson plan, or one or two of those. The next major area of a lesson plan is actually the instruction, and that's where you have lots of things to build upon in your instruction. And you want to make sure that you make that inquiry-based and technology-enhanced. And then lastly, you have an area of assessment that you need to include. And again, I'm going to look at this a little more detail in just a minute. But rubrics are the major way for you to assess any kind of lesson that is inquiry-based. And since we're asking for that, it's a good idea to develop a rubric for the end result of what you're asking students to do in your lesson. So the goal here is not to come up with a quiz for your students. You might want to do that as one of the maybe check for understanding or formative assessment tools, but your goal here is for them to do some kind of a project that you can assess with a rubric, because that's what inquiry-based learning would generally involve. There are a number of other links here that we'll be looking at. You can check them here, or we're going to just go through the module, and you'll be able to see them as well. But I provide you with a template. This template I would suggest that you download, and then you can complete it. If you want to work collaboratively within a Google Doc to do that, that's fine. Otherwise, you guys can figure out how you want to work collaboratively, but you will need to have all these ingredients. So let's just look at them very quickly. You will need a title for your lesson, the grade level, subjects, and lesson length. The expectation is that you're not going to make this a 10-minute lesson, that you're going to make this a little more involved with that. Many times, especially at the high school level, secondary level, you'll be creating something that might take a day or two, and you might do the same thing with the elementary level. Prepared by would then be your team. Overview. Now, the overview, you really want to, here's a question that you want to really answer. What is the overall purpose of this lesson? So once you have decided that, you can erase this part of it and put in the overview. You don't need to keep everything that's in brackets. Standards, so here you're going to identify the standards and benchmarks. Make sure that you use the actual protocol for identifying that standard. So it might be something like LA 1.5-2.33 or whatever it happens to be, and then spell it out for me so that I know which standard that is. Same thing for using Common Core standards. If you choose to use them, it's either Florida or Common Core, and then also the NET standards. Your learning objectives, you want to make sure that you have specified what the students are expected to be able to do once they finish this lesson. The materials and resources that you need for the lesson. And then the introduction, how will you introduce your lesson? This should be something that kind of is a real attention getter, something that gets students engaged with it. So you might have to do a little creative thinking on that one. The lesson activities are the details, and you really need to be very, very detailed and complete. Think about the lesson activities as the heart of your lesson plan, and think about them as needing to be so complete that if I were a substitute that have never had any kind of educational background, I could come and pick up this document that is your lesson plan, and I'd be able to follow it tick by tick. So it's really, really important that you spend the time thinking about the details of your lesson. This is significantly much longer than the one line that I have here on this template. I have one lines for all of them. It's only meant to be a way for you to know what kinds of ingredients that I want in the lesson. So, your lesson activities could be a page long. It could be 2 pages long. And I have an example that I'll show you. In strategies, you want to make sure that you include some strategies for your ESOL and ESE students. And also in strategies, you'll want to specifically denote what kinds of technologies that you've integrated and why you chose to use them for the lesson. Next, you have the evaluation critique of whatever educational software or web-based resource you might have used. In other words, what kind of technology did you use? What makes it important for the lesson? And why did you use that instead of using something else? How will you summarize your lesson? Remember, in the summary, it's not so much just saying what you did, but it's how do you enhance this lesson so that students can elaborate on it, can extend, get more information, etc. The assessment, the expectation again is if you're doing a inquiry-based lesson, it will involve some kind of product or project that your students will do. And the best way to assess those kinds of things is through a rubric. So you would want to develop a rubric that you would include as part of your lesson. And last but not least, which is not normally part of a lesson plan, but it is part of your grading assessment for this project. And that is, I want you to include which learning theory or theorist your lessons plan subscribes to. So although it's not part of the lesson, I include it here in the template so that you won't forget it. Next is a sample lesson plan. This one, again, is one that was submitted by a previous student group, and it is not an A++ work, but it gives you an idea of how to complete the template, what kinds of things are being looked for. So it's just a guidance because students sometimes don't know where to start with it. And then last but not least, in a collaboration such as this, unlike what we did with wikis, I can't see who does what, and I don't want to see it in a lesson plan that so-and-so did this part and so-and-so did this part, because that's not what the real world's all about. The real world is that the expectation is that as a team, you'll come up with a lesson. It really doesn't matter who did what. For a class like this, it does matter in terms of looking at the overall grade. But instead of dividing it up, what I have used is a rubric that is a collaboration rubric right here that you would download as an individual. Okay, remember, as a team, you're going to come up with a lesson plan. And you would submit the identical lesson plan, each of you, for your assignment. But what you also do is add this collaboration rubric as an addendum to your lesson plan. And this is where it will be unique or individual per student. So if I worked with Mary and Joe, I would put my name here, and then I would put Mary's name here, and then I would download a second one and copy it to the bottom of this and put Joe's name. And I would rate how Mary contributed to the project, how I felt her responsibilities were met, and also how respectful she was. And then I would make some comments. So if you have a great working relationship with your team and you really did some collaboration for this project, I anticipate that people will all be rated high. But, and unfortunately it happens in every single class, there's always one or two or maybe more students who don't live up to their end of the bargain. And this is your chance to tell me that. I don't want it shown in the assignment, but I want it shown here that Joe did not contribute. And then rated here and also commented on here. Or that Mary was not respectful in the way that would have liked her to be. And then you would rate 2, 3, whatever it was, or 1, 2, whatever it was, and then provide a comment as to why you felt that way. So you don't want to just leave, especially negative ratings, without comments. But you can rate if all of your team members worked the same way. You can put all their names on here at the same. But I prefer really that you do it with individual team members, okay? So each one of those will be individual. So I don't know what Mary submitted about me, and I don't know what Joe submitted about me because I created my own and they created their own to submit. But the identical thing that was submitted was the collaborative lesson plan. Okay, once again, I have optional activities here. These are things that will be expected if you want the exemplary or satisfactory performance levels for the last big project. Lots of different optional activities that you can do, and some of you have already done them with those optional blog posts along the way. But there are some other options here of things that you can do. That, again, not required, but assuming that you want to have an opportunity to earn the maximum points in exemplary or near maximum in satisfactory performance levels for this last project, this is how you would do it, and I'm giving you an opportunity to get prepared for that now instead of waiting until later. Here is the multimedia that is optional for Chapter 4, and a reminder of things to do. So you're going to read Chapter 4 and reflect right about those 3 concepts for your digital blog post number I, and then you're also going to be working with your team on the collaborative lesson plan project. It's not due this week, it's due a week from Sunday, but it is best not to wait until next week to get started on it. So the plan is to get started on it at least this week. And then you will see the place to submit your digital blog post I, And that's all for this one. Hopefully everything has been answered in terms of the kinds of questions that you might have. But if not, please let me know.